Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of the EMS Case Study Podcast. My name is Chris Ortiz. I'm the EMS Division Chief for Albuquerque Fire Rescue, and today I'm joined by Shannon Van Meer from Rescue 14.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
So today we're going to talk about a unique case of field ECMO.
Yes.
We've began the ECMO program late 2019, early 2020, took a pause for a couple of years because of the pandemic and have restarted the program, a new iteration now in 2022. And we had our first case that you were a part of. So happy to talk about that today. So give us an idea. Rescue 14, Engine 14, dispatched to a semi-truck in a parking lot. Report was a 57-year-old male in cardiac arrest with bystander CPR ongoing. You and ECMO 1 were dispatched to the call. Tell me some of the things that were running through your mind as you were en route.
So Rescue 14 was on our way back from UNM. So we weren't at the station, but the alarm room did a great job of recognizing that it was a potential ECMO candidate. So we didn't have to get on scene first. ECMO was dispatched before we were on scene. And it was up kind of by the Amazon facility. So it's sort of way out there. And we were told that it was, a witnessed arrest with bystander CPR. So we're like, it sounds like an ECMO candidate. So we're kind of going through all of the things. I pulled up the ECMO protocol on the MDT and just sort of went over the things that we wanted to keep in mind, making sure that we are exposing from the waist down and just all the things that you need to do, all the inclusion and exclusion criteria for ECMO as well. So once we got on scene to make sure whether to cancel them or keep them coming. Great
job doing that pre-work. So you arrive on scene and tell me what you see.
So it was right outside. I was on the road, and there was two bystanders, and the son had gotten the patient out of his semi-truck, and they were doing what looked like decent bystander CPR. So we take over compressions. We get him on the monitor, and his initial rhythm was fib. So it looked like he had just collapsed while he was driving.
Okay. And in the background, as all of this is going on, it sounds like ECMO 1 was initially dispatched. However, Engine 3 and Rescue 3, either one of those crews are fully capable of staffing that unit. However, they were on a Delta call.
Correct.
Thankfully, they were all monitoring the radio when they heard this call come out. So as soon as they cleared, they made themselves available to take it. What was the discussion on scene on whether they should keep coming since they had kind of a delay in their initial response?
Correct. Luckily, we had 7-8 on scene relatively quickly, so I was sort of managing the patient and managing the code, and they were sort of dealing with knowing whether there were doctors en route or if the ECMO truck was still coming. So 7-8 made the decision since 3s became available to continue dispatching them to the call because he didn't meet any of the exclusion criteria. So he was a very good ECMO candidate. So we continued to do our ACLS and run the code and then wait for ECMO to arrive on scene.
Great. So he met the ECMO criteria based on his age, based on the bystander CPR, a witnessed arrest, no comorbidities that would have made him not a successful candidate. 7-8 arrived on scene. You had made mention that initial rhythm was VFib, and it sounds like when 7-8 arrived, patient was still in VFib.
Correct.
So he made that decision to have them continue in.
Yes.
That's a great call by everybody on scene. So talk us through your treatment. Obviously, this is a call that we do run regularly, but it is still high acuity. So talk us through the events of the arrest and how you worked it as a team.
I think it's nice because Engine 14 is an ALS pumper, so we had an extra medic on scene as well, and we did have a 5.5 that ended up arriving on scene probably about 5 minutes into the code. So again, making sure that we knew that we were going to have everything ready for ECMO, but making sure that we got the Lucas device on him, that we got access. We have amiodarone on the truck now, so that was our antidysrhythmic of choice. So we ended up making sure that we were just doing the best that we could to be doing really good ACLS all the way up until ECMO showed up. So we initially, because there's kind of a lot going on the upper body, so we ended up getting a tibial IO initially just so that we could get epi and amio on board quickly because he was in fib, along with defibrillations and trying to shorten those interruptions, keeping them to less than 10 seconds in between rhythm checks. And then we initially dropped an LMA. And then I believe, so when 5.5 showed up on scene, they were able to intubate the patient and armor his airway that way with good capno reading.
Awesome. So we have the most important thing, as we know, is continued a good ACLS, and that's what you all did. It sounds like there was no interruptions in the compressions. You shocked all the shockable rhythms as you saw them. You established the airway, controlled tidal volumes. You established an IO, so did all the markers that make a successful ACLS procedure. So ECMO 1 arrives. You're still running this call. How many times had you defibrillated the patient? Had they remained in VFib?
I believe we had defibrillated him 5 times, and there were a couple doctors on scene, and so since we had defibrillated him and we had done our epi and amio, we'd done our 2 doses of amio, I was like, well, this is refractory, so we can't really change the vector, but I had mentioned maybe possibly MAG, and the doc made the decision, since ECMO was there, to not try MAG, but just to get the patient loaded and try to get him cannulated.
Okay, so that's the only change that we made out of our normal course of treatment. So we didn't do the MAG, but we had ECMO there, so the decision was made by the physician not to do that.
Correct.
Talk about the dynamic that you felt. So you are running the scene, which you're very capable, do a great job of doing it day in and day out. It's your call that you know how to handle and address. What was the difference with having all of those doctors on scene? How did it affect you?
It was just a little. I feel like we have great protocols, and we have great we run scenes very well. We run codes very well. It runs very smooth. We all know our role. We all know kind of what we're supposed to do in those situations, and this was very much not that. I think that there was a total of 6 doctors on scene. So the transition from, I think everything ran very, very, very smoothly until ECMO showed up. And not that it didn't run smooth, it's just a different from what we're used to on a daily basis. We made sure that he was exposed. We had him on our gurney loaded backwards. So as soon as ECMO showed up, we took out their gurney, we put in our gurney, and then that's where things kind of just ended up going just differently, because it's still technically my patient, it's still technically a code, but he's in the back of a rescue with 5 doctors doing procedures that I will be the first one to admit I know nothing about, but it's still technically my code, and it's still technically my patient. So kind of trying to we're still doing 2-minute rhythm checks, and we're, still doing compressions up until he's cannulated. So there was a little bit of, it was a learning curve for me for sure, because it just wasn't a normal code for us. Yeah.
And it's understandable, and regardless if it's an ECMO case or if it's just a run-of-the-mill call where you have doctors showing up on scene, I think the important thing to remember is that we operate under guideline. We
Correct.
do this well. And ultimately, we make the final decision on that. We're able to gather input from the physicians who are on scene, but that is still your patient, your call. So you did a great job of maintaining control over that scene, regardless of all the things that were going on around. So great job. You mentioned, and this was brought up by 7-8 and some of the other folks, that you were already preparing for the ECMO truck to arrive.
Correct.
So you had them reverse loaded on the gurney, ready to go. You wheeled them into the back. They started the procedure. I think in the ideal circumstance, what should happen is that monitor moves down to the step area. The officer who's in charge of that call can just focus on the chest up, right? So you're basically maintaining that you have that airway. You're still getting the automatic compressions from the Lucas device until the cannulation happens, and you're monitoring that rhythm, but just communicating with them. But ultimately, they're responsible for everything below. But like we joked, this is only the 5th time that it's ever happened in North America. So it takes a little bit of it's a learning curve, not to mention being out of the game for a couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you did a fantastic job. What challenges now in hindsight did you foresee, and how would you prepare for them better the next time you encounter this type of event?
I think hopefully some kind of configuration for if Engine 3 and Rescue 3 are potentially on a call, then do we just load him up and take him to the hospital? If he's, an ECMO candidate, would that have been faster? Just kind of having that in the back of my mind and knowing, the distance because that's pretty far out there. And then just, again, knowing the procedure for when the docs get there and having the patient loaded and still being able to monitor the monitor and continue that patient care and all of that while the doctors are doing what they need to do and supporting them. And the ECMO truck hadn't really run in a long time, so there were some equipment things that were going on, and we were doing everything that we could to support the docs and getting them the equipment that they needed. And between 5.5 and us, we were able to get that all running smoothly. So, but it's a longer scene time than we're used to. So that was something as well that it's good to be prepared for. Once the patient's cannulated, they're being perfused. So getting off scene is not necessarily an issue, right, at that point. So knowing that too, and being able to prepare the family, because the patient's son was on scene. And I know that most family members, if their loved one is in a situation like that, they're going to want you to go, because they think that that's what's best for the patient. So just being able to have that conversation early and preparing the patient's family for what could potentially be happening is a good thing to kind of have in the back of your mind as well.
Absolutely. It's key to let them know that everything that could be done for them within the hospital is being done here on scene, which is difficult even for us, right, as first responders to be able to communicate that. But that's a fantastic job. I think in terms of your question, I think everything about the call itself was it was unique, just from the time of dispatch, which typically it's a simultaneous dispatch with ECMO 1 and the first arriving crews. If Station 3 isn't available, then it's just you're running the operation as normal. This one was unique in the fact that they were monitoring, they were able to clear, they could get there quickly, and given the geography, I mean, if you think about it, you guys had already shocked 5 times, so your scene time would have been extended anyway, and I don't think you would have met the window to get them back to the facility to be cannulated. So you made the right decision by staying and gave them their best opportunity to survive. So I think you did a fantastic job when it comes to that. I think there's a responsibility from the administrative side and then from the EMS side and the UNM side to ensure that, again, it's been 2 years, been out of the game, but we don't know what we don't know until we go through the events, to have all the equipment fully stocked, ready to go, and be able to get everybody comfortable on that scene. So
absolutely,
you guys did a fantastic job of managing a difficult scene. We talked a little bit about outcome, because that's always what we're looking for, right? This is the 5th successful cannulation that we've had in the field. Unfortunately, we were not able to get a successful outcome for the patient specifically. However, as we stated, everything that you, the crew, and the physicians did for that patient was the absolute most that could have been done, and even more if we'd have transported initially. So you made a great decision. Anything else that you learned from this case that you wanted to relay to some of the field crews who haven't had the opportunity to experience it yet?
I think just running your code and keeping your, making sure you're doing good ACLS, running those calls and making sure that you're defibrillating when you need to defibrillate, and knowing the drugs for your antidysrhythmics. Like I said, having amio on the truck was great. That was the first time we'd been able to use it as well. So I think that it ran really, really smoothly. It was a cool call to be a part of, and I think I definitely learned a lot. And it's, it also is different. You're going to have different doctors. You're going to have different, a lot of that situation isn't always going to be the exact same. But I think it ran really smooth.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And the physicians that we work with, they understand our system. They know what their roles and responsibilities are, just like ours. So they're good partners in this. So
Absolutely.
we hope to continue to that. I think everybody did a fantastic job, from the alarm room with recognition to 7-8 to the crews performing the treatments. I think you guys all did fantastic. I wouldn't have changed anything about it. Obviously, we want that good outcome, but you gave that patient the best possible opportunity. So I want to thank you again, and thank you for joining us today to kind of talk about this interesting case.
My pleasure.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you. That's it for today. We'll see you at our next case study. If there's any questions, feel free to reach out to your assigned 7-8 or to the EMS division. Thanks.